Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has concluded a high-profile visit to Washington, where he held talks with US President Donald Trump and senior American officials. The meeting lasted several hours and centered on some of the most complex and sensitive issues in international affairs today. Key topics on the table included Iran's nuclear program, the conflict in Gaza, regional security across the Middle East, and the broader framework of US-Israel relations going forward. President Trump indicated that diplomatic engagement with Iran is ongoing. Netanyahu reaffirmed Israel's long-standing position that a nuclear-armed Iran poses a fundamental security concern. Neither leader announced a major new agreement, and several significant questions remain unresolved, including the future of Gaza and a broader regional peace framework. Netanyahu also confirmed Israel's participation in a US-backed initiative focused on regional stability and post-conflict planning for Gaza. The visit comes at a particularly sensitive moment in international diplomacy. The conflict in Gaza continues to generate global concern, with humanitarian organizations raising urgent questions about civilian conditions on the ground. Regional actors across the Middle East remain engaged in the situation, making the diplomatic environment especially complex. At the same time, the United States has signaled renewed interest in diplomatic dialogue with Iran, a development that carries deep implications for regional security calculations, particularly for Israel, which has long viewed Iran's nuclear program as a core security issue. For Netanyahu, the visit also carries domestic significance. Like many leaders, he faces political pressures at home, and international engagements of this kind are often as much about signaling strength to domestic audiences as they are about foreign policy outcomes. The announced participation in a new US-backed regional framework suggests both countries are looking toward longer-term arrangements, though the specifics of that framework have yet to be publicly detailed. Despite the level of attention this visit received, no definitive agreements were publicly announced on the most pressing issues. There was no confirmed joint position on Iran's nuclear program, no ceasefire agreement for Gaza was announced, and no comprehensive roadmap for regional peace was put forward. However, it is worth noting that the absence of a public announcement does not necessarily mean the absence of an agreement. High-level diplomatic meetings of this nature, particularly those involving sensitive security matters, often produce understandings, commitments, or coordinated strategies that are deliberately kept out of the public domain, at least for the time being. Intelligence cooperation, military coordination, and back-channel positions on Iran are all areas where both governments have historically operated with a degree of confidentiality. What was said publicly may, in fact, be only part of what was decided. The full picture of this meeting may only become clear over time through policy actions, statements, or developments on the ground that point back to decisions made behind closed doors in Washington. These open questions will continue to shape the diplomatic landscape in the weeks and months ahead. Several developments could follow from this meeting. Continued US-Iran diplomacy could prompt further consultations between Washington and Jerusalem, as Israel seeks to ensure its security concerns are factored into any broader agreement. Observers note that the outcome of those talks, if they progress, will have consequences for the entire region. On Gaza, international pressure for expanded humanitarian access and a clearer post-conflict governance plan is expected to continue. How both Israel and the US navigate that pressure will be closely watched. There is also the question of whether new regional frameworks, potentially involving Gulf states, Egypt and Jordan, could take shape, and what role those arrangements might play in stabilizing the broader region. Diplomatic analysts consistently note that in environments this complex, the risk of unintended escalation remains a concern that all parties are working to manage. Responses to the visit have varied widely, reflecting the deeply divided international perspectives on these issues. Protests were held in several cities, with demonstrators raising concerns about the humanitarian situation in Gaza and the signal sent by the high-level diplomatic meeting. Human rights organizations called for greater urgency in addressing civilian conditions in the conflict zone. Several allied governments issued statements urging restraint and calling for renewed efforts toward a peaceful resolution. Analysts tracking energy markets and global security flagged the visit as a reminder of how events in the Middle East can have far-reaching economic and geopolitical consequences. Supporters of the visit, on the other hand, argue it reinforces a critical security partnership and provides a constructive framework for addressing some of the region's most serious challenges. The trajectory of US-Iran diplomatic talks, the evolving situation in Gaza, and the response of the broader international community will all play a role in shaping the outcome. What is clear is that decisions made in Washington and across the region in the coming weeks and months will carry consequences well beyond any single meeting.